Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Trump says the war against Iran could end very soon, but warned military operations will continue. Oil prices fall after Trump signals the war with Iran could end soon. NATO says it's ready to defend all allies after Iranian ballistic missiles entered Turkish airspace. US President Donald Trump says the military campaign against Iran is already achieving major results, claiming Tehran's missile and drone capabilities have been significantly weakened. But despite suggesting the war could end very soon, he warned operations will continue until Iran can no longer threaten the United States or its allies.
US President Donald Trump says the war against Iran could end soon, but warned that military operations will continue until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. Speaking in Florida, Trump described the campaign as a short-term excursion, claiming US and Israeli forces have already destroyed much of Iran's military infrastructure.
We continue to target Iran's drone and missile capabilities. Their drones are way down. Their drone manufacturing has been hit.
Trump also stressed that Washington's goal is to ensure Iran cannot develop weapons that could threaten the United States, Israel, or their allies for a long time. Meanwhile, Israel says it has continued carrying out waves of airstrikes across Iran, targeting military command centers, missile production facilities, and other infrastructure linked to the Iranian military. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the conflict as a war imposed on Iran, insisting the country's actions are acts of self-defense. He also said Iran is unlikely to resume negotiations with Washington after what he called a bitter experience with past talks. The conflict escalated further after Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed Iran's new supreme leader following the death of his father, Ali Khamenei, in earlier US-Israeli strikes. With the fighting now entering its second week, tensions remain high across the region, raising concerns the conflict could widen further.
Turning back to the war in Iran, and oil prices have fallen after surging to their highest level in more than 3 years, as US President Donald Trump signaled the war could end sooner than expected. Markets reacted quickly, but analysts warn volatility is likely to continue.
Global oil markets have been swinging sharply as the conflict involving Iran disrupts supplies from one of the world's most critical energy regions. At the start of the week, prices surged above $100 a barrel and briefly approached $120, their highest levels since 2022. Traders feared a prolonged conflict could cut supplies from the Gulf, particularly after shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was disrupted. The narrow waterway carries around a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. Tankers have struggled to move through the area, while some producers halted pumping as storage filled. Prices then dropped more than 6% after US President Donald Trump predicted the war could end sooner than expected and outlined steps to ease pressure on energy markets.
I might add, we're also waiving certain oil-related sanctions to reduce prices. So we have sanctions on some countries. We're going to take those sanctions off till this straightens out. Then who knows, maybe we won't have to put them on. There'll be so much peace. But when the time comes, the U.S. Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed.
Shortly afterwards, Trump also posted on X warning Iran against blocking oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, saying the United States would respond with far stronger military action if the flow of oil was stopped. Despite the drop, analysts say the conflict could keep markets on edge.
And if we keep on pushing above $100 a barrel and get more toward like 110, I think you're going to see that nationwide pump price average get close to $4 a gallon. That's painful for consumers, and it's probably also painful for elected leaders, the politicians. We're also going to see higher prices in things like airfares. So travel will become more expensive. And then we also have to worry about the second order effects on things like the equity markets.
Analysts warn there could also be wider knock-on effects on financial markets, saying falling stock portfolios and retirement savings could weaken consumer confidence and business spending, potentially pushing the economy towards recession. Governments in Europe are also weighing possible emergency measures as prices surge.
The oil reserves are being held exactly for situations like this. If we are facing crisis, if we are facing disruptions of supply, that's exactly where we can intervene.
The shock is already spreading through national economies. Egypt has raised domestic fuel prices by up to 17%, while Pakistan has announced emergency measures to cut government fuel use after record increases in petrol and diesel prices.
Regional tensions are escalating as Israel reports new casualties from missile attacks, while signalling a broader campaign against Iranian-backed forces. Neighbouring Lebanon is calling for an urgent ceasefire and direct negotiations to prevent the conflict from spreading further. Our correspondent Maria Rodriguez-Abalde has more from Tel Aviv.
During the last 24 hours, teams provided medical treatment to 76 people across the country, including 20 injured by missile debris, 1 deceased, 1 in critical condition and 1 in serious condition. The remaining 56 people were injured while heading to shelter areas or suffered symptoms of anxiety. Since the beginning of Operation Rise and Leon, 11 deceased and more than 500 were injured. The Revolutionary Guard threatens Israel, saying that they will not launch again missiles with less than a 1-ton warhead. Regarding Israel, Iran only has 128 missile launchers left. Iran spokesperson Riyadh, with this comment, let them stay in the fantasy. But the reality is that Iran fired only 8 missiles since midnight. Now they're also suspicious that the Houthis will join the conflict. Lebanon calls for direct negotiations with Israel and an immediate ceasefire to stop all Israeli aggressions on land, air and sea against Lebanon. Lebanese President Youssef Aoun also called for additional logistical support for the country's armed forces to strengthen their ability to disarm Hezbollah. Sources say that the Israeli government was informed of the Lebanese appeal, but reacted quickly, saying it was too late. The Israelis made it clear that they were now focusing on eliminating Hezbollah.
NATO began its biennial cold response exercises in the Arctic on Monday. This year, the drills place greater emphasis on the role of civilians in supporting the military. NATO's Arctic Sentry drills aim to strengthen its Arctic presence. The exercises take place across northern Norway and Finland, near the border with Russia. About 25,000 troops from 14 countries, including 4,000 Americans, will join. The US pulled 1 F-35 squadron without saying if the Middle East conflict affected this. Norway calls 2026 the year of total defence to boost civilian and institutional readiness. Europe is boosting its military presence in the Eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea as tensions linked to Iran rise. France is sending additional warships to escort commercial vessels, while allies, including Greece and the Netherlands, reinforced regional defences to protect trade routes and European territory. Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, with France expanding its military footprint across the Eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea. This as Europe responds to rising tensions linked to Iran. President Emmanuel Macron, speaking during a visit to Cyprus, announced that France will send a second warship to the Red Sea to reinforce the EU's maritime protection mission, Aspidus. The vessels will help escort commercial shipping through waters increasingly threatened by attacks from Iran-aligned Houthi militants. The deployment is part of a broader French buildup across the region. Macron says nearly 12 French naval vessels, including an aircraft carrier strike group and helicopter carriers, are being positioned across the Eastern Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and potentially the Strait of Hormuz to safeguard trade routes and deter escalation. This all follows what officials say was the first drone strike linked to the Iran conflict on European territory. Last week, an Iranian-made Shahed drone hit a British military base on Cyprus, prompting European allies to reinforce defenses. Standing alongside the president of Cyprus and the Greek prime minister, Macron declared that an attack on the island is effectively an attack on Europe. France has already sent a frigate and air defense systems to help protect the island, while Greece deployed fighter jets and additional naval patrols. The moves underscore growing concern that the Middle East conflict could spill into European security and disrupt some of the world's most important energy and shipping routes. And that's why the Netherlands also said it would send the air defense and control frigate Evertsen to the eastern Mediterranean, specifically as part of the carrier strike group led by the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle. For Paris and its European partners, the signal is unmistakable. Europe is no longer just watching the crisis from afar. It's positioning naval power across the region to defend its territory, its allies, and the global trade routes that keep its economy moving. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Leaders are meeting in Paris today for the second Nuclear Energy Summit, focusing on the growing role of civil nuclear power in global energy and climate policy. The summit, organised in cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, brings together heads of state and government and leaders of international organisations and financial institutions alongside industry experts. Panel and roundtable discussions will address regional approaches to nuclear energy, conditions for financing nuclear projects, and advanced reactor technologies and innovation. US President Donald Trump says Cuba is in deep humanitarian trouble and suggested the island could face what he called a possible friendly takeover.
Maybe a friendly takeover. It may not be a friendly takeover. It wouldn't matter because they're down to, as they say, fumes. They have no energy. They have no money. They're in deep trouble on a humanitarian basis. And we don't want to see that, but they were very, very bad to a lot of people, as you know, and a lot of people living the Cuban-American vote, which I got at record levels. Very important. Those people are very important to me. I know what they went through. They went through hell. Some of them have gone on to be some of the most successful people in the country. Cuban-American business people, some of them are like the most successful in the country. And a lot of them are friends of mine because I've been fighting this battle with them for a long time. The Castro regime was brutal, but they lived off Venezuela. Now they don't live off Venezuela. Sends them no energy, no fuel, no oil, no money, no nothing. They lived without Venezuela. They couldn't have made it. And we cut them off from everything else. So, they're going to make either a deal or we'll do it just as easy anyway.
Now, right after a short break, we turn to the economic fallout from the Iran conflict as oil prices fell after surging to their highest level in more than 3 years, as US President Donald Trump signalled the war could end sooner than expected. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Global oil prices had surged past $119 a barrel as the conflict involving Iran continues to disrupt energy markets. Prices then dropped sharply after President Trump suggested the conflict could end sooner than expected. Traders are increasingly concerned about potential supply shortages from the Middle East, particularly as tensions threaten shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil transit corridors. Analysts warn volatility is likely to continue, raising concerns about inflation, economic stability and the wider global impact of the conflict. Let's bring in our guest now. Osama Rizvi, founder of Rizvi Insights from Lahore, Pakistan, joins us. Osama, thanks for coming to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, oil surged above $119 on fears of supply disruption, but now prices have dropped sharply after President Trump suggested the conflict could end soon. What does this volatility tell us about how sensitive energy markets are to geopolitical signals?
Well, definitely, we are seeing some wild swings and extreme volatility in the energy markets, both oil and gas. What happened with oil was very interesting. Friday closed at 90. Monday, it jumped all the way to 115, 116. Tuesday, they fell back to 80s. And now, as we speak, it has started to crawl back up to 90s as well. One of the biggest thing behind the drops is, of course, even on Friday, even on the weekend, there was a post by Trump on Truth Social saying that maybe that Iran's apologies to its neighbor can be considered as a surrender, and maybe, things would go towards de-escalation. However, it did not. We saw more strikes happening on Sunday. One day ago, Trump spoke with CBS News, hinting that there may be an end to the war. So these maybes are affecting the trajectory of oil markets. But traders, hedge funds, and money managers have also taken a lot of profit. So it's been the profit-taking activity that has pushed back oil to lower 80s. But we need to remind ourselves that the Hormuz is still closed. Supply is still on the card. So we will see another bout of bullishness in the oil markets.
Okay, so what were the main drivers behind this sudden spike? And was it primarily about actual supply disruption or market fears about what could happen next?
But in this case, it is driven by fundamentals plus market sentiment as well. If you look at the world right now, there is a lot of oil. We all agree with that. However, whether that oil can reach its destinations or not, that is the question right now. Strait of Hormuz accounts for 20% of the global oil supply. So essentially, closure or reduced traffic there has cut off or put at risk around 20 million, 18 million barrels per day of daily oil consumption by different countries. We are also seeing that plans to sort of offset this decline, this supply disruption have not materialized yet. We don't see any SPR release. We haven't seen any release by G7 countries as well. So I think these were the factors that sort of increased the uncertainty, and nobody knows actually what is going to happen next. I continue to say that there is a lot of oil, we all agree, but the Strait of Hormuz, shipping tanker rates and everything makes it really difficult, really expensive to reach its destination.
From a market perspective, Rizvi, how unusual is a price move like this?
Well, not quite unusual. We see that this goes back to 1970s oil price shock. We saw similar increase even as recent as 2022 when oil prices jumped to 122, 125, more than where the prices are right now as a result of Russia-Ukrainian conflict. And that was not a conflict that was going to impact directly the oil supply as much as Hormuz, right? And then we also saw this sort of swing 20-25% move towards upward 25, and towards the end it moved downwards, so prices fell toward 15, although the time line for that was a little bit stretched out over the course of months. Right now what is happening, $30 up, $30 down overnight, that is something strange. But once again, given the importance of the geographic region that is being targeted at the moment, and even the energy infrastructure that is being targeted at the moment, I think this is a much natural reaction to what is going on.
Could energy be emerging as a strategic weapon now in this war?
I think it has already been, and once again, I would refer to 1970s oil price shock, OPEC producers, putting a embargo on oil supplies. So energy has always been weaponized. But what we are seeing gradually that as geopolitical confrontations become a normal part of our global governance structures, we will see further instances and frequent instances where this energy, oil, gas, renewables even would be weaponized against countries.
Now, how critical is the Strait of Hormuz to global energy supplies? And if it becomes unsafe for tanker traffic, could that fundamentally reshape global energy markets?
It is actually reshaping the global energy markets. We saw LNG jumping 50%. 80% of the LNG passing through Straits of Hormuz comes to Asian markets. So Asian markets are particularly vulnerable, and for them the significance is extreme. Overall as well, 30-40% of LNG, 20% of oil passes through this very narrow choke point. So its significance cannot be overstated. Along with that, we are also seeing that this is the first time that in the modern history that we are seeing out of a blockade. And moving forward, we would see that countries and organizations would be practicing or, sort of sorting out go-arounds for such a situation, because before today, it was not even imaginable that this would happen. West-East pipeline
So we're having some technical issues with our guest. Rizvi, can you hear me okay? Osama, rather? Okay, we seem to have lost our guest. Let's take a break now and we'll be back with stories from the region. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Under the instructions of President Ilham Aliyev, Azerbaijan's Ministry of Emergency Situations has dispatched around 30 tons of humanitarian aid to Iran. The convoy includes 10 tons of flour, 6 tons of rice, 2.4 tons of sugar, over 4 tons of drinking water, and about 2 tons of medicines and medical supplies. The aid follows a March 8th phone call between President Aliyev and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian aimed at supporting the needs of the neighbouring country. Officials Niazi Rahimov and Gurban Sadigov from Azerbaijan's cabinet of ministers are accompanying the convoy to Astara to ensure swift delivery. Azerbaijan continues to play a major role as a transit route for people leaving Iran, with diplomats and foreign nationals among those crossing into the country. Our Chimnaz Shahlar has more from Astara.
Evacuations from Iran through the Astara state border checkpoint are continuing. So far, more than 2,000 people have been evacuated from Iran to Azerbaijan. The number includes more than 300 citizens of Azerbaijan. Diplomatic missions are also using the Astara checkpoint. Most recently, Mexico's ambassador to Iran, along with several Mexican diplomats and their family members, were evacuated through this border crossing. The ambassador said Mexico's embassy in Iran will temporarily continue its work from Baku and described Azerbaijan as a friendly country with strong bilateral relations.
Mexico and Azerbaijan, we have very good bilateral relationship. I actually come often to Azerbaijan. This is one of the many times I have come from Iran as posted as ambassador of Mexico there. But this time I came, as I told you, to continue working with my team, along with my team from Baku, to continue to assist the Mexican community in Iran. And hopefully all these things that we are watching currently, they will finish soon and through a peaceful solution.
Meanwhile, humanitarian aid has been sent to Iran on the instruction of the president of Azerbaijan. The convoy is expected to pass through the Astara border crossing. That's why we remain here in Astara, continuing to follow the process. Chimnaz Shahlar with Nijat Kasimov, A News.
Turkey says it's strengthening its air defence capabilities and coordinating closely with NATO allies after ballistic missiles entered Turkish airspace in recent days. The developments come as Ankara continues diplomatic contacts with regional leaders in an effort to contain the expanding regional conflict. Here are the details.
In a statement released Tuesday, the Turkish Defense Ministry announced that Turkey was in close consultation with its NATO allies to enhance the country's air defense capabilities. According to the ministry, these measures include the deployment of a Patriot air defense system that is currently being prepared for operational readiness in Turkey's east-central Malatya region. The announcement came amid heightened tensions after a second ballistic missile linked to the ongoing regional conflict entered Turkish airspace on Monday. Turkish officials say NATO air defense units intercepted 2 such missiles within the past week. The incidents prompted Turkey's foreign ministry to summon Iran's ambassador in Ankara to formally protest the alleged missile launches. Iranian authorities, however, have denied that their forces targeted Turkish territory. In a phone call Monday, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan told Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian that violations of Turkish airspace could not be justified under any circumstances. Erdogan warned that missile strikes affecting neighboring countries would benefit no one and only risked widening the conflict. He also stressed that Ankara opposed what he described as unlawful interventions against Iran and continued to pursue diplomatic efforts aimed at ending the crisis. Pezeshkian, for his part, told his Turkish counterpart that Tehran would launch an investigation into allegations that Iranian missiles had entered Turkish airspace. According to Iranian officials, Pezeshkian also accused Israel and the United States of attempting to create tensions between Iran and its neighbors, including Turkey. On the same day, Erdogan also spoke by phone with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. Aliyev condemned Monday's reported missile attack targeting Turkey and expressed solidarity with what he described as the brotherly Turkish people. Erdogan thanked the Azerbaijani leader for the call and for Baku's continued support. Officials say Ankara will continue coordinating closely with its NATO allies while monitoring developments in the region. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Kazakhstan is evacuating its citizens from the Middle East as tensions in the region continue to rise. According to the country's foreign ministry, thousands of Kazakh nationals have already been brought home, while the evacuation operation is still ongoing. Our correspondent reports from Almaty.
Rising tensions in the Middle East have prompted Kazakhstan to accelerate the evacuation of its citizens from the region. According to the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, more than 7,300 Kazakh nationals have already been brought back home. The evacuation is still ongoing. People are returning on flights operated by Kazakh and foreign airlines, while others are leaving the region by land, crossing through Azerbaijan, Armenia and Turkmenistan. Earlier estimates from the foreign ministry suggested that around 8,500 Kazakh nationals were in areas affected by the escalation. And amid the tensions, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev welcomed a statement from Iran's leadership announcing it would refrain from attacks on neighboring countries. According to Tokayev, such steps could help reduce tensions across the Middle East. Meanwhile, officials in Kazakhstan are also watching the economic implications of the crisis. National Bank Chairman Timur Suleymanov says the country's economy remains heavily linked to oil revenues. More than half of Kazakhstan's export earnings and over 30% of government and national bank revenues come from oil. Suleymanov says that when global oil prices rise, export income increases as well. That means more foreign currency enters the domestic market, which can help support the national currency, the tenge. According to the National Bank chief, higher oil prices could also bring additional revenues to Kazakhstan's national fund. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Pakistan closes schools and reduces fuel use to manage soaring energy costs amid global oil price spikes.
Pakistan's government has announced emergency measures to conserve fuel amid rising global oil prices driven by the conflict in Iran. In a televised address, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said schools will close for 2 weeks, universities will shift to online classes, and government offices will operate on a 4-day week. Fuel use will also be reduced, with a 50% cut in allocations for official vehicles over the next 2 months, and half of government employees encouraged to work from home. Departments will curb spending on travel, vehicles and equipment to cope with soaring energy costs. In Karachi, residents welcomed the steps.
I think the Prime Minister has taken timely action, and this is because it will at least minimise the negative impact on our economy.
Some traders, however, voiced concern.
We've heard that the government is advising schools to close, and they're going to close them. Either way, it's not right. For people like us who deal in school accessories and uniforms, it's going to be very tough to make ends meet. Using petrol prices as an excuse for this isn't justified.
The government's plan comes after Pakistan raised petrol and diesel prices by 55 rupees per litre last week, the largest increase in history. Officials say the austerity measures aim to reduce transportation demand, lower energy consumption and protect the economy from further shocks linked to the Middle East crisis.
The United States says international aid to Afghanistan should be reassessed, even as the country faces a worsening humanitarian crisis. Speaking at the United Nations Security Council, Washington pointed to Taliban restrictions, especially on women, as a key concern. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis reports from Kabul.
The United States says international assistance to Afghanistan needs closer evaluation, citing the Taliban's continued restriction on women and limited cooperation with the international community. Addressing the UN Security Council, US Ambassador Mike Waltz said the world must consider how effective its engagement is, particularly when female Afghan staff working for the United Nations are not even allowed to go into the office. Waltz also highlighted the scale of the UN assistance mission in Afghanistan, which has the largest budget of any special UN mission, with its mandate up for renewal next week. At the same time, the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan remains severe. The UN World Food Programme says more than 17 million people, around 1/3 of the population, are facing acute food shortages, including nearly 5 million experiencing emergency levels of hunger. UN officials warn the crisis is worsening as funding falls short. Humanitarian agencies hope to assist 17.5 million Afghans next year through a $1.7 billion appeal. But so far, only about 10% of that funding has been secured. They also caution that ongoing regional tensions and rising prices are adding pressure. And without progress on rights and humanitarian issues, Afghanistan could again become a source of broader instability. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
After a break, we turn to regional security concerns as NATO reports intercepting a ballistic munition that entered Turkish airspace amid the escalating conflict with Iran. Authorities in Turkey say government institutions are on high alert, while Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has condemned the attack. We'll examine the implications for regional stability. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Turkey has heightened security measures after a ballistic munition linked to the conflict involving Iran reportedly entered its airspace and was intercepted. Authorities say government institutions across the country are on high alert as tensions in the region continue to escalate. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has also condemned the attack, highlighting growing concerns that the conflict could begin affecting neighbouring countries. Now let's bring in our guest, Mr. Melih Demirtas, former diplomat and political analyst, joins us now from Ankara, Turkey. Melih, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Ms. Tuna.
Now, how serious is the reported interception of a ballistic munition entering Turkish airspace? And from a security standpoint, how does Turkey typically respond to such airspace incidents?
Yes, Ms. Tuna. Actually, in every program, we just maybe repeat how tense this atmosphere is, starting from this maybe crisis in Ukraine, in Middle East, and now Iran. And unfortunately, we always repeated that our geography or critical positions, I mean, also both Turkey and Azerbaijan, means something, means a lot. I think for both, Iranian side, both United States and Israeli side, we can say that both forces, I think, found something important in our geography or very critical meaning in our maybe foreign policies. So real investigation is still needed, we can say, because yes, there are missiles. The official report said that these missiles coming from Iran. But actually, I think just yesterday night, we had another talk with Mr. President Erdogan and Mr. Pezeshkian from Iran. And they also talked that there's still, of course, a need for investigations and talkings and about diplomacy. There must be a road to go. But we can say that, yes, the situation is critical because the area is Turkish area, very crowded area. I mean, yesterday's instance just happened in Gaziantep area. Maybe you know, the audience knows this. Gaziantep is a very crowded city area place. So we can say that, yes, Turkey is in high alert, but still the situation is somehow also must be investigated from both sides. I mean, from United States and Israeli side and from Iranian side, we must be maybe open to dialogue and for more diplomacy, because our presidents, I think, said yesterday night again that these investigations harmed these neutral actors. I mean, we are a neutral actor. We must here stop and think that diplomacy is going on still. Yes, Azerbaijani territory and Azerbaijani maybe population is also harmed because of these incidents. But still, I think the talks must be done between the sides, also with Iran. It is just the opposite what United States in Israel, especially just last week done and still doing in this Iranian territory. Just this diplomacy is not the diplomacy road what they have done. And Just we are the opposite side with this United States and Israeli attitude, actually.
Okay, as you said, Mr. Demirtas, Turkey is neutral, as is Azerbaijan. They continue to hold their neutral positions. Are these provocations from terrorist elements or infiltration inside Iran? What's your analysis there?
It could be many things, Ms. Tuna. Just they said, as you know, a false flag term. This is very important, very critical term, always used since maybe Middle Ages for calling false ships for bombardments to other shores. I mean, from military history. I think it is already used in many incidents. I always remember also the near history of Turkey. Just 2015. We have, for example, an incident where a Russian plane is just shut down in the territory of Syria, where the Syrians, of course, have, important civil war with the fallen regime of Bashar Assad. And now we have another incident of the suicide of a Russian ambassador just in the center of Ankara. Just all the incidents happened just 10 years ago, for example. It is not so familiar to us, to Turkish foreign policy and domestic politics, that many things can happen in very critical times in our geography, both in Turkish, both in Azerbaijani territory. So I think our intelligence or maybe security forces or military, of course NATO forces, but also our dialogue channels with Iranian counterparts must be always open. Yes, terrorist elements can be everywhere. Terrorist elements can infiltrate both Iranian, both Israeli, both other territories, and they can really shape something according to their interests. But these terrorists can also really collaborate with the other services, I mean, foreign services, and we already know that from near Turkish history how they can be harmful to our security and stability.
And Turkey is a NATO member. Does an incident like this raise questions about the alliance's security posture in the region?
Actually, we once again seen that NATO is an important, of course, structure because, as you know, that all these missile interceptions, all these threats are all stopped by the NATO, of course, capabilities. We all know that this technologies is a collaborative technology. I mean, one is belong to Spanish, one is, of course, United States, Turkish, of course, engineering systems. Everything is done under the umbrella of NATO. It is an important collaboration still. We already seen that. But what we must object here is that the unilateral use of NATO systems against this stability or for unilateral actions of some United States and Israeli collaboration doesn't mean the spirit of NATO, Ms. Tuna. Because NATO is a collaboration of alliance, is the collaboration of stability since maybe the second half of the 20th century. But what we have seen this last week is just an important action from one side. I mean, they started it, we must understand. I mean, United States and Israeli side. And now Iranian side, maybe unexpectedly and surprisingly for many commentators, responded it with heavy military, with heavy forces. And unfortunately, some territories, first in Middle East and now maybe our territories, also Azerbaijan territories, start to be harmed. And what must be done, of course, about diplomacy. And like Mr. President Erdogan and Pezeshkian's done yesterday night, more talk and more communication, especially in such critical times.
So from a diplomatic perspective, how would incidents like this normally be addressed between neighbouring states?
It is done differently in different times, Ms. Tuna. If you go to the first decades in 20th century, it has just maybe started the world wars. Maybe you remember from the famous Ottoman history, just 2 ships are borrowed from Germans. I mean, the names are changed. They bombed the shores of the Russian coasts, I mean, Odessa and the other shores. And now, and then the First World War started. It is the famous history of Turkish, of course, Ottoman last times. This is just the diplomatic time. You know, when you stop something to communicate, when you stop also this channel, and when you suddenly use these weapons without any thinking for the other side or without thinking of tomorrow, then you can easily start a very heavy conflict, even a war. I mean, Turkish diplomacy and Turkish side nowadays makes this opposite. I mean, what we have done maybe in the beginning of 20th century. We just talk with the neighbors, even it is Iran, even it is Russia, even it is once Syria in the Assad times. Think about this. Even with Greece, we have some, as you know, with historical baggage, we have many issues like in the Cyprus nowadays. They already made some attempts there. I mean, in Cyprus issues, even they are also NATO allies. But still, this channel is always open, Ms. Tuna. yes, these missiles are coming, but first of all, you must know that how these missiles coming, where it is coming from. Yes, the official declarations is always coming from Iran, but still a very independent and real investigations must be always done, must be always continued, even with some independent experts from United Nations, from other experts and other military sectors.
Okay, and Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has condemned the attack. What message does that send about regional solidarity?
This is the much more critical point in Turkish public opinion also, Ms. Tuna, because we really attribute the most important maybe relation to our brother country, Azerbaijan. Mr. Aliyev is right. Yes, they're also sensitive, maybe security is maybe shaken. I mean, Azerbaijani territory is also targeted by Iranian missiles, quote unquote, coming from these sources. But I think from yesterday on, there's the talking between Iranian and Azerbaijani side. We really positively observe this dialogue, I mean, between these Iranian and Azerbaijani sides. And of course, we positively always feel the support of Azerbaijan or Mr. Aliyev. He condemned, yes, these attacks, but I also know that he's also open to this dialogue. I mean, he's a skillful diplomat. We all know that. He's a skillful statesman, I mean, with his cadre. And he will also observe the situation, both Israeli and United States, and the maybe unilateral things, and both, I think, this Iranian maybe counterattacks. And he will also decide in a neutral, in a positive diplomatic sense. I mean, Mr. Aliyev and his important brother Azerbaijani diplomats and statesmen. And thanks for the support, of course.
Mr. Melit Demirtas, it's always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for your analysis today.
Thank you, Mr.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates. Thank you for watching.